So what does it really take to grow a franchise organization?
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Saeks.
And to help us today to answer those questions is a colleague of mine, a friend in the industry, certainly an icon in the industry. His name's Chris Walls. He's the president and CEO of Go Minis, which is a franchise organization, and it's gominis.com. So we are live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And if you're listening to this episode as the podcast, it's Chris Walls, ChrisWalls, and it's Go Minis, just like it sounds, gominis.com. Chris, welcome to the Fordify episode.
Thanks for having me, Ford. I'm excited to be here. You did a great job at our conference speaking for us and got people fired up, and we're still talking about it a month later. So happy to be here.
Well, I love it. And I know the night before I got a chance to sit with you, and you've had quite a history in franchising. Why don't you share our viewers and listeners, like, how did you get into franchising and where did all that experience come from?
Well, I've an interesting history. As I mentioned when we spoke before, I started out as an attorney, and I was a trial attorney for about 10 years, and I've meandered through different work. Yeah, thank you. I've meandered through a lot of different industries, and I really have this intellectual curiosity about different types of businesses and how they work. And how I ended up in franchising is, I saw the Go Minis brand many years ago when it was a dealership, and I helped a friend of mine actually get started as a dealer, and then went off and did other things. Then they turned it into a franchise, and they were just at an inflection point where they were ready to really grow, and they thought they needed a different type of leader in. And he gave me a call and said, "What do you think?" I did my research. I looked at the numbers and I looked at the business, and I actually fell in love with the business. It's not a very complex business on the one hand, in that it's a storage container. We deliver it to you. You put your things in it. We can move it around the country for you, or locally if you'd like, or you can leave it on your property and store it, or we could store it for you. So it's pretty simple business, but the margins are some of the best the margins I've ever seen. And I said, wow, this is great. And when you couple that with franchising, where you can help people become entrepreneurs, have their own business, really create some value for something they may want to sell down the road or give to a family member, it really is a fulfilling experience. And that's why I decided to become the CEO at Go Minis about 4 years ago or so.
And in that growth, I mean, one of the things that, every franchise brand, whenever I'm hired, I always ask, what are the top challenges facing your organization? And it's always similar. It's the franchisor wants their franchisees to follow their systems and to use the tools they've created. And the franchisee, when they're newer, sometimes inexperienced, just sits back and says, well, why aren't you driving more business? And they don't necessarily take advantage of all the tools and their local area marketing. And so franchise relations are a really important thing. And I know that's something that you work really hard with your family of franchises. How many locations do you guys have now to share with our listeners?
We have about 114 sold franchises that operate out of about 70 locations.
And you're growing. Your plans for growth, what are your plans for growth?
Yeah, I want to add double digits every year. I mean, it's not an insignificant investment to become a Go Minis franchisee. So if we can get 10 or 12 a year, I'd love to do that. When I first joined, we were really only adding 1 or 2. And the other thing we're being a little bit more selective. So a lot of people that do come in to talk to us really aren't the type of franchisee we're looking for. So we have to be selective. So I think if we get double digits every year, we'll be very, very happy with that. And we've had that since I started about 4 years ago.
And one of the things that makes your growth, I know that's another thing we talked about, was, vetting the new franchisee, where it's not just someone who has the investment, but you're really looking for a lot of character traits in order to pick the best franchisee. So what would some of those traits be for finding the ideal Go Minis franchisee?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You learn as you go as to what that ideal franchisee is, and I think it does grow and change as you grow and change. But I think first and foremost, it's kind of a rule follower. One of the reasons that entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs join a franchise is because we've already made the mistakes and we fixed them and we figured out what to do right. So what we do is we're really going to speed your path along to profitability and successful business building. But a lot of times, if they're not a rule follower, people come in and say, well, geez, I'm smarter than that. I can do it better than they did. It's like, the issue is we've probably tried that. And we've either been successful or we've failed at that. But you really need to start looking at the rules and following the rules. That doesn't mean you don't listen to your franchisees that may have come up with a better idea, and we try and vet that out. But we do it in a little more organized fashion. We can't have one guy in Albuquerque doing something while someone in Wichita is doing something else. We try and say, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do a controlled test of that and see if it makes sense. And if that's the case, we'll roll it out across the network.
Yeah.
So that when you look at it, it's like rule follower, but not afraid to be an entrepreneur and risk taker, but in a controlled fashion. That's one thing. But you really need someone who understands that, hey, this is my business. Really, you're in business with someone else, but you're the ones who are going to make it successful. We're going to give you the tools. You got to use those tools. You got to work them, but it's your hard work that's going to make you successful. Doesn't mean that the franchisor is not going to work hard to help you be successful, but you really got to put the time in. And I think that's an educational process. When someone comes in, they need to understand that it's not that, hey, I've paid my money. I'm sitting here now. I've opened my doors. Now where's all my business? You got to go out and knock on doors, and you got to be a salesman, and you got to be a deliveryman. You got to be, chief cook and bottle washer sometime. But that's what makes success. And when you see our truly successful franchisees, they're the guys who work really, really hard to get there. And I'm really proud when they do that. And you can just see the difference. You have people that start at the same time, and one guy, he's calling you every week and saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then you don't hear from anybody from another guy maybe for 6 months. And you look at his business, boy, he's not doing well. What is he doing? So what's nice about that is we've brought in some support staff now where we can help those people too. So it's like, hey, maybe you should be doing this. And they'll go out there. We'll send somebody into the field and basically help him be successful. It's like, this is what you need to do, because not every franchisee comes to you with different skills. Maybe somebody was a salesman. Maybe somebody was an engineer. Maybe somebody was a banker. And they don't have, each one has a little bit of hole in their skill set. So what part of our job is to figure out, okay, yes, I believe that person fits into our franchise system, but we're going to have to help them do X and try to figure out what it is where he's going to need help and developing that support for them.
Yeah, it's really about hiring your weaknesses. I mean, one of the things I talked about even in the keynote, one of the things that's great about your organization is you had a sales playbook, and you're giving them processes for dominating their local marketing and really building those relationships in the community, building the referral connections, creating a referral culture, and driving leads, and the importance of providing great customer service, because the best market in the world won't overcome poor service. So the national brand can only do so much. At the end of the day, they give you that foundation and that system. You called it rules. I call it compliance and system, same thing. But if they do really follow those rules, those are the ones that are the rock stars, the ones that end up buying multiple territories, becoming a multi-unit owner, and so forth. So back to franchise relations, what are some of the things you've tried in your organization that have worked? And what are some things maybe that didn't work so hot? And we're all talking hypothetically. And for those of you listening, this is for information and educational purposes only. We are not giving you legal advice. Okay, Chris. So what has worked and what hasn't?
Thank you for that. So, I tend to be more of the carrot versus the stick. So if I see that, because one of the issues, the way we were a dealership model back in 2002, when they were founded, we converted to a franchise model in 2012. The dealership model was very lax, and basically you had a protected territory, and you only had to buy your containers from Go Minis, and don't hurt our trademarks or brand was basically about it. And, coming into the franchise system, we had a lot of guys that converted initially. So they were used to doing their own thing. They had their own websites. They had their own marketing. They had all these different things they did on their own because there was no support. So, when I look at that and say, okay, but now you have a franchise agreement that has our system in it, has rules and, some compliance issues that you need to do. When I walked in, they weren't enforced very heavily. And so what I've said is like, okay, it's really important for, make sure our brand is portrayed the same everywhere in the country. So, we've instituted these things, and we've kind of incentivized people. It's like, okay, when you're advertising, you need to do this. You need to make sure it's this color. You need to make sure that it only appears with this. So we incentivize people with a co-op or something along those lines. If you're going to advertise and you use this, we'll help pay for that, and that gets people kind of on the straight and narrow on that path. And we do the same thing with other types of digital advertising, making sure they're using approved vendors. We only do co-ops with approved vendors because technically they're not supposed to be using anybody.
Right.
So we're trying to make it easy for them and reward them for doing what they should be doing. And I think that's a better way to do it, particularly the way we've come up from the dealership model to the franchise model. Eventually, the stick may have to come out, but that's the last resort, in my opinion. But I think also sometimes it's just they don't realize that they're doing something wrong, and then if you can help correct that and it increases their business, that doesn't hurt either. So again, it's a little bit of the we have a support staff now that can help them and say, well, why are you using so and so? Well, you're not really supposed to do that. Like, oh, I didn't realize that. Well, why? Do this guy. By the way, it's cheaper over here. and our approved vendor, we've got a national deal that they're going to save you 10 or 15% off what the retail price is. Like, oh, I'm happy to do that. So sometimes it's education, sometimes it's the carrot, and maybe it's the stick. Very, very rarely, though.
I do believe, though, it's important to provide that open communication channel. Now, does Go Minis? Now, I know some of the answers to these questions, but for our listeners, do you guys utilize Franchise Advisory Council? And if so, how many people are on it?
We have 9 members of the Franchise Advisory Council, and they represent certain regions in the country. And really, what we're trying to do is have the two-way communication, as you mentioned, is find out what's going on. Hey, we're going to do this idea, and if 9 people on that board say that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, why are you going to do that? And then you explain it to them. Well, here we think it's going to do this. We think it's going to increase your revenue, and here's why. All right, let's give it a try. Or let me go talk to the people that are in my district and see what they think of it as well, not just the 9 folks on there. So really trying to get, from the bottom up, grassroots, what do the franchisees think about this, and get their opinions, so maybe we can modify the decision or understand the headwinds we may face if we do institute, maybe this new policy or procedure or new product or something along those lines. So yeah, we do utilize that as well. And it seems to be working for us. And we do, look, my cell phone, everyone has my cell phone. They can pick up the phone, and they do often, or drop an email. You really do have to communicate back and forth, because a lot of times some of the best ideas come from the field. People that are out there doing it every day, and not that we're in an ivory tower, but at the same time, we're not running a franchise business every day. We don't have any company stores. So getting that feedback from the boots on the ground is really, really important to us.
Yeah, I can see that. When you think about the future going forward, what are some of the opportunities and what are some of the potential landmines that you see?
The opportunities we have is, I think our growth is really limitless. I mean, a lot of our folks, a couple of things, we're seeing a lot of our growth from our current franchisees. To me, that's the ultimate thank you, because someone's in the system, they're successful, they want to buy more. So, if I'm selling 10 franchises, 6 of those franchises are going to be to my existing franchisees. So that says, hey, they like the system, they like what they're seeing. The growth, and a lot of those folks also own self-storage units.
Right.
The problem with self-storage units is sometimes they can't get approvals for more units. They're full, they can only raise the prices so much, and they're done. And maybe they have 300 units, but they can't get any more zoning or whatever it may be. With Go Minis and portable storage in general, the sky's the limit. All you need to do is go find another lot, and you can store these. And it doesn't have to be an expensive real estate. You can store them outside the city or in rural areas that are a little cheaper for the land. And it's like, wow, I have 500 containers and I'm full. Well, Let me go buy another 100 containers. So the growth is really limitless from that. And as you grow, this business scales so nicely. You don't need a lot of employees to run this business. My largest franchisee has 1,200 containers and has 5 employees, 3 truck drivers, and 1 person is a general manager and somebody answering the phone. So, in this day and age where it's so difficult to find good employees, you can run this business and scale it with a limited amount of employees. The landmines that we see out there, I'm actually concerned about the smaller mom and pop. We know who our big competitors are. Right. We're third in the marketplace. We know where they are, and we know we're attacking them on service. We're attacking them with local call-in numbers versus a call center. We have a call center, but we urge our franchisees not to use it because we want to be part of the community. So we have different ways we're doing that. But you're getting a lot of people out there that are buying 24, 36, 48 containers and competing with you on a micro level. And I think that is, that's an issue for us. But what overcomes that is Go Minis. It's the brand.
Yep.
And, we need to keep developing the brand. And that's one of the things we need to keep enforcing with our franchisees is people are going to recognize the name over, mom and pop portable storage. Just, oh, Go Minis. I saw their ads on television. I saw, oh, they're a reputable company. I'm going to go with them because actually they may be cheaper or the same price as the mom and pop, but they recognize the brand and people ascribe value to the brand.
Yeah. And it also has to do with your quality containers. And I think that what I see as your growth and the opportunity is the more that the franchisees dominate their local marketing and really that the mini container or Go Minis is kind of synonymous. Like Xerox was for copying, right? So you're getting to the point where you can say, well, I need a mini. Let's go to Go Minis and get a mini. And so if they create that narrative and that dialogue and they get the testimonials and everything else, I mean, then it becomes synonymous. I mean, that's the ultimate goal for everybody. That way, if everybody starts calling the product, a mini container, because I mean, when I first got the booking hold a year ago before your conference, whenever it was, I immediately knew what your brand was. And a lot of times I get hired for a franchise group, and I'm on an International Franchise Association, IFA member. I'm a supplier member. I've been speaking in franchising for 34 years. And, some brands, I really know what they do. And I also speak for a lot of fast casual, which is fast casual and what's called quick serve restaurant, which fast food, right? And those guys, they struggle with the employees. I mean, I did one with a chain of wings. You guys can figure out who it was. But the store manager told me that they used to operate with 96 employees. Now they're operating with like 46 employees. They can't get enough help. They've got half of the restaurant closed. They can't seat people fast enough, because if they sit there, they're either sitting in the lobby, which they'd rather have them sit in the lobby, but if they sit them at a table, then they're mad because the server doesn't come over there. Okay. So and if you think about that business, I mean, if I had to choose, I wouldn't work in fast food or food service, just because of the dynamics, where something like your business, it's an easy to understand product. It's scalable. It's profitable. There's all different types of franchise brands. I literally just got my franchise opportunity, because I'm in this today. So I just got my guide today, which is my prospecting book to call for speaking engagements. And, sure. But I look at your business and I really like how solid your franchisees were. I mean, everybody understands what they're doing. They know what the values are. They know where the opportunities are. They're following the system. You have a really solid playbook. You had a great team. I mean, that's one of the reasons I asked you to be on the show today, is because I'm looking for insights, because I have listeners that are in executive offices, that are Fortune 500, that are entrepreneurs. They're not necessarily all about franchising, but the lessons you can learn from franchising. I mean, that's the key. Don't reinvent the wheel. When I first started, when I first started as a consultant and a business guy, I was business growth innovator because I invented products and I had a think tank. But when I got into franchising, I had to drop that word innovator, because CEOs like you, if they see innovator, they're like, no, we don't want someone to come in.
We don't need that.
Right. So I became the accelerator. So, again, it's just like any good marketing. What other closing thoughts would you have for our listeners? First of all, if you've been listening to this episode and you joined late, you can go to gominis.com, GOMINIS.com. You can check out Go Minis. You might have one in your local area. This is the president and CEO, Chris Walls. And we've been talking today about franchise growth, franchise relations, what's it take to be a good franchise, and what are some of the pitfalls and opportunities. Any closing thoughts you'd have for our listeners?
Yeah, I think if you're going to get into franchising as a franchisee, pick the right system, do your due diligence, and then follow it. And if you're going to be on the franchisor side, it is a people business. Know how to deal with different types of people, because you're going to get the know-it-alls that come in. You're going to get the people that are going to say, show it and do it all for me. You're going to get the people that are so strongly motivated, or, that come in. It's all different spectrums. And if you don't have a lot of experience with how to deal and how to motivate those individual franchisees, it's going to be a tough road for you.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. It comes down to the people. And unfortunately, a new broom sweeps clean, right? Someone who you think is going to be the best franchisee in the world kind of pitters out. And then you've got those that you think are going to be problem children, and they just rock the system. And maybe they don't have as much experience, but they came from an engineering background and they understand systems and they want to follow it. So I really appreciate you being here today. This has been Ford Saeks on Fordify Live with an episode with Chris Walls, the president and CEO of Go Minis.
Thank you for tuning in to Fordify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.